Position to Win is a community for women who are on a journey to put themselves in position to win, in pageantry and in life. On the Position to Win podcast, current and former local, state, national, and international title holders from various systems give you insight into their journeys, tips and tricks, and of course, authentic, unfiltered conversation. Here you will find the motivation you need to take up space, shatter glass ceilings, serve with intention, and fiercely chase crowns. This is not just for pageant girls. This is where we find what we need to put ourselves in position to win. I'm your host, Jada Samuel. I am so excited to have my guest today, former Miss District of Columbia, Andolyn Medina, with me today. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Jada? Thank you for having me.
I am well. Y'all, her resume is like longer than a CVS receipt, and so I just have to give y'all a little glimpse of all of the amazing things that she's done in her life. She completed undergrad in 3 years with a degree in psychology and a minor in music from Hollins University. Am I right?
Yes.
You have 2 master's degrees from George Washington University, Master of Art in forensic psychology and in clinical psychology. Mm-hmm. And you are a 4th year clinical psychology doctoral candidate at GWU. She's also a 2nd generation naval officer, a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a Beyonce stan, and a fur baby mom to her dog, Knowles. Did I leave anything else out that the people absolutely need to know?
No, I think you covered everything. Those are the main things.
Well, of course, this podcast is about pageantry. So can you tell me, how you got your start in pageantry? What led you to this world?
Yes. So a lot of people, I don't think, realize this about me. I think because when you say the resume, it doesn't really come off this way, but I'm actually really shy, more of an introvert than anything. And so my mom got me involved in pageantry when I was 4 years old because she noticed that I was really shy. I also had a speech impediment. And so she thought that pageantry would be a really good way to sort of get me out of my shell and to get me practicing some of those public speaking skills so that I could gain confidence. Tied into that was that she also heard me screaming around the house. So she thought that was a sign that I wanted to sing. And she thought that pageants would also be a really good way for me to practice that skill set and just introduce me to a new world. So that's how I got started. And then she and my dad always agreed that if I wanted to quit at any point in time, I could. And so there have been periods where I've taken a pause and done something different. But that's sort of what got the whole thing started.
Wow, at 4, I never would have known because you are so authentic. Some of the people who are toddlers in tiaras, age competitors, are very pageant patty, programmed in every single way. And you guys, I randomly bumped into Andolyn in DC one day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know you from Instagram. And we were cool. And I was like, this is great. She's not, pageant patty. And I love that about you. So that is really cool that you started at 4. I never would have guessed.
Yes. Yeah. My dad had a really big thing where he was very adamant that I would not be the toddler in tiara. He was like, she will be natural. She's not putting on all that makeup. We're not doing that. She's not going to have that attitude. None of that. So that was all very, very intentional. But I remember that day in DC. That was so much fun.
That is so cool that your dad was that intentional about your journey in that way. So you competed in the Miss America's Outstanding Teen part of the program, and you won Miss Virginia's Outstanding Teen. Yes. Tell me how that happened and what you gained from that experience, because you ended up attending college on a scholarship that you gained from that competition. So tell me about that.
Yes, it was so incredible. So my year competing, it was my I have a habit of whenever it's my last year competing, it's the push that I need to do whatever needs to be done. So it was my last year that I could compete for teen. The pressure was on. Really had just made peace with it, do my best. And my parents were always really good about never pressuring me to win. That was obviously a goal, but it was never the main thing, the main takeaway. So it was always just do do your best. So that's the energy that I went into it with. And then that year was the first year that they offered the scholarship to Hollins University. So I remember clear as day sitting in the orientation when they announced it. And of course I'm thinking like, oh, this is so cool. A full tuition scholarship to college. Like I can finally pay my parents back for everything that they've paid for me to have this journey. And then they say it's an all-girls school. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going there. You can't pay me enough to go there. Like, you will not see me there. I am an only child, but I was very clear, like, all-girls school was not it for me. Funny enough, though, I met Hannah Kiefer, who was Miss Virginia, I want to say 2009, and she's also an alum of Hollins. So in that time, she was like, girl, they offered the scholarship, like, you can
take it.
Yeah. And I was like, no, it's an all girls school. Like, please. And she was like, you're crazy. She's like, just go and visit. Like, don't knock it until you try it. Just do it. But like, do not knock it. So lo and behold, fast forward a couple of months, I won Miss Virginia's Outstanding Teen. So then it's like a little bit more real. Like, okay, now I do have this full tuition scholarship. Am I really gonna say no? And at the time, UVA was my top choice of where I wanted to go. However, I decided to do an overnight stay at Hollins University, and it just so happened that my I wouldn't say she was my tour guide, but like my host, is now one of my best friends. Her name is Pavithra. And so like that night sold me on Hollins. I literally called my parents the next day and I was like, cool. Don't need to look anyplace else. Like, I'm going here. So being Miss Virginia's Outstanding Teen was incredible because I really got to take advantage of the scholarships that this organization made available. And then being able to go to Miss America's Outstanding Teen is one of those experiences that I don't think you realize how beautiful it is until like after it's over. But it was the sort of first time where I had friends in every state, and just being able to have that network where now like Rachel Yuki Wyatt is a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. Tons of us went to Miss America or went to Miss USA. We still keep in contact about who's having babies or who's getting married. And it's just beautiful to see other successful women, to see like what came out of that group in 2012 when we were 16, and to see where we are now in our, late 20s, just like conquering the world. Beautiful from that standpoint. And then the experiences. So one of the coolest things that I got to do as Miss Virginia's Outstanding Teen, in addition to placing in the top 10 at nationals, was I got to meet and sing the national anthem for President Obama. And so to be 16 years old, I don't think I realized at the time, like just how huge that was, but to be 16 and, meet the first one, just the president, but two, to meet the first Black president of the United States is just an incredible moment that not many 16-year-olds get to have. So talk about pageants opening doors. It was certainly able to do that for me.
I absolutely love that. I think that is one of the coolest fun facts that anybody could possibly have. Like you sang for President Barack Obama. Like, who's topping that in a like two truths and a lie? Like, no one's topping that one.
That's true.
So I love that you really took advantage of the scholarship opportunities. That's not something that everyone does. Everyone doesn't want to pursue higher education. That's not something that everyone's interested in. So you decided to come back. After you used the scholarship, you decided to come back. Did you experience any like pressure just having already held a title as a teen, a state title, deciding to come back as a Miss? Like, what was that journey like? What was that experience like?
There was pressure and it was just nasty. It was just like, I think the pressure of it all, a lot of people thought, so I competed in Virginia for years before competing in DC twice. And I think there was a lot of pressure just that everybody sort of like quote unquote knew I was coming back. But then there was this pressure, like if she comes back, she's gonna win, or there's gonna like just a lot of like things. And so there was a lot of pressure coming in from me where I just kind of wanted to like learn or do my own thing. It's a really big shift from teen to Miss. And my first year competing in Miss, I didn't make the top 10 at Miss Virginia. And that was just like, like it hurt really, really really, really bad. And a lot of people, I think, were like, see, she just was like a one, like she's a teen queen. She can't be a miss. Like I have chubby cheeks. Like I look young. They were like, she's never going to be able to, transition to miss. Her voice, she's this, she's that, but she's a teen queen. That's where she is. And there was a lot of that like I took to heart because it's hard not to.
Right.
But I remember that year coming off of that, my dad had said to me, like, okay, like you're competing with the big guns now. So like you got to prepare like you're competing against the big guns. And I think that year was so humbling for me that I was just like, y'all are not about to get me twice on this. Like it's not about to happen. So it just pushed me to like really prepare myself in a different way, more so mentally and more so like in the shape of, I think really, I wouldn't say for the first time, but really making me realize like pageants do not define you, because it was not a matter, I still hold this to this day. Like I don't think that I didn't make the top 10 because I wasn't good enough to make the top 10. I'm sure I was, but I think it's just a matter of difference of opinions. It's a matter of scores. It all comes down to whatever it comes down to. But it was really important for me to not take that to heart and just realize like, okay, if you're going to keep competing, you cannot allow something to define you in that way, like ever again. You have to know who you are. You have to know what you stand for. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in whatever product you put out and like let the chips fall where they may. The second year coming back from Miss Virginia, I was Miss Roanoke Valley. The pageant happens in Roanoke. They were counting down. They got to like the last one in the top 10. I was like, Lord, not again. And then they called me and it was like a really beautiful moment. But like all that to say, I think transitioning from teen to miss is really difficult. There's a lot of pressure. And you just have to like be gracious with yourself in that process and realize like you are developing and you're growing. And I truly do believe, looking back on my years of competing, were there times that I could have said like, oh, in this year I think I could have won, or in this year I think I could have won? Sure. But I wouldn't have been nearly as prepared for the kind of state title holder I would have needed to be until my very last year. Like when they say that everything happens for a reason, everything truly, truly happens for a reason, where like you won't even see it until it's like that timing and you're in the destiny of whatever God had for you. And then you're like, yep, that's exactly why it didn't happen when I was 18. That's why it didn't happen when I was 20. That's why it happened here.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I've never won my state title, but I believe there's like a pruning that happens during that preparation. And I love that you talk about that transition in mindset where it's like, okay, I'm not doing this to win anymore. I'm doing this to become a better version of myself. And that's literally what Position to Win is all about. It's about putting yourself in that position to where your mind is like, okay, no matter what the outcome is, I am still a conqueror, and this is how I'm going to approach this phase, and this phase, because this is going to prepare me and propel me in so many different ways in other areas of my life. So I love that you have had this experience. You were an amazing Miss DC. I enjoyed watching you at Miss America. And for those of you listening who did not know, she was a finalist at Miss America. So let's air a round of applause if you're listening. You were absolutely incredible. But I think what made you stand out was that you were just so authentic and sure of who you were. And I think that this new age change is going to provide space for girls to really settle into who they are. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that like impacts the women that we see on stage at Miss America. Now, let's talk about the fact that you have, again, this CVS receipt type resume. Like, you've gotten so many degrees and you seem to balance. I don't really believe in balance. I always say that it's a juggle. Like, something is going to take priority every day and every moment. Like, things are going to shift. But it seems from the outside looking in and just reading through some of your posts that you've found your way to juggle and manage the things that you're doing, rest, keeping a healthy mind, all kind of at the same time. So can you talk about navigating that space between like graduate school and PhD life and becoming a naval officer, like all while you're competing? Can you tell me? Balancing, juggling.
No, it's hard for sure. I think It's really interesting. Well, to touch on two things. One, I think going back to what you said earlier, another big thing for me was like I watched so many women that were incredible compete. Like I could name them all off that were just like incredible. Like why didn't they win Miss States? I don't know, but it didn't make them any less incredible. And I think I look sometimes at people that competed at Miss America who never won, but the things they're doing in this world 10 times, like, no judgment, but 10 times more incredible sometimes than former Miss Americas.
Hey,
So I want to say, like, there are different ways to win. And I think, like, that's been a big part of how I've tried to, like, think about my journey in this. I remember when I was competing for Miss DC, there were people that thought that I was doing certain things for Miss DC. And I just thought, like, you have it really all wrong. For me, my dad growing up always told me, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And so for me, I've tried to align everything that I do to make sense with, like, who I am or what my career path is. So originally my platform growing up was volunteering, but I changed it to human trafficking. And that was a direct reflection because I got my master's in forensic psych and then worked as an intern at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So it like went directly into like my line of work and something that I was passionate about, that I knew that I could speak to. And that also like very much so aligned with like who I was. Same with like my, aspirations with clinical psychology. All aligned with like who I am, what I believe very much so in. My career now is being a lieutenant, but being a Navy psychologist and working on the mental health of our military service men and women. So for me, it was always about working intentionally and doing the things that I knew, wouldn't exhaust me. And I think like when you're doing things that are not aligned or intentional with like who you are, what you really love to do, it exhausts you. Like it literally drains you to have to like put on all these different hats or put on all these different shows for all these different people versus feeling like you can just show up as yourself in a lot of different, in every space that you're in. And being Miss DC, I think was really one of the most challenging years of my life because it was constantly me reminding myself like of that intentionality, like that's who I wanted to be, that's how I wanted to show up. And it's hard when you constantly have a lot of people trying to critique that very like authentic, genuine person. And so Miss DC, quite honestly, was one of the hardest years of my life because not only was I going through behind the scenes health issues that like nobody noticed or knew about, but like I said, I'm naturally introverted, I'm naturally shy, and like being this public facing figure that's like all of a sudden you open yourself up to everybody, everything that you do is for critique, and it seems like nothing that you can do is right, and it seems like the moments that are positive, the people that see your heart, like those moments feel fleeting, so you have to like take all of that in when you can and remind yourself. And so with balance, I think the biggest thing for me during that year was surrounding myself with people that made more deposits in my life than withdrawals. My friends, my family became the biggest source of refuge because there were definitely moments that I forgot who I was, and having those people in my life to just be like, nope, like we're not allowing you to think that, nope, like you're doing this, nope, you're doing that, really helped me to strike that balance because they always made sure that I was with them or that they could remind me who I was when I needed them most.
I absolutely love that. One of the things that is most, I don't want to call it a challenge for me because I don't mind showing up and being who I am in whatever space I need to be myself. But I feel like a lot of title holders, especially ones that are over 21 or that have, boyfriends or dating or are living, just living life, traveling, exploring, doing all these things, feel like they have to put like a line or a barrier between the title holder and the person. And I feel like that was one of the things that I enjoyed most about watching you as Miss DC is that I didn't feel like there were two different people. Like there wasn't Miss DC and there wasn't like Andolyn. It was just like all Andolyn, and you just happened to be Miss DC. And I think that was one of the coolest parts of watching your journey. So if anyone is listening and wants to take a scroll back, this girl is the real deal. Like she's herself all the time. And I love seeing you live, you date, you have fun. Like those things are important. And I think finding ways to juggle those things in are equally as important. Like you said, just having those people around you to remind you of like who you are and what you truly enjoy and who you are outside of the crown. So I am really excited to move into our next topic, which is the fact that you study the human mind. Like,
Yeah.
you study our brains, you know how our brains work,
Yeah.
and you talk often about mental health on your personal page. And we all know that women who are competing in pageants are typically high achieving women. And sometimes we can have this like pressure placed on ourselves. We can have other people placing that pressure on ourselves. There's so many factors that contribute to us having sometimes tough journeys with our mental health.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that people can actually put into practice to ensure that they are maintaining a healthy mind, and that they are always like in this space of like conquering what's next and having that winner's mindset?
Yeah. Um, I am really big about therapy. So I was in therapy throughout throughout the latter half of my year as Miss DC. That was really important to me. And I know that therapy isn't always accessible. So I think, again, there are like options like self-help, or different apps that you can use as well. I think meditation is really important, just having that time to check in with yourself. And I know a lot of people don't really love that because it feels like, how can I, sit still for 15 minutes? But for me, it's more so like you have 15 minutes, and the point is your mind is going to go all the different places because that's what the mind does. But mindfulness helps you track, where is your mind going in those spaces? Like, what are the common themes that are coming up? And I think like continuously having those moments to check in with yourself is really important. Finding the things that you love that really like give you joy, that aren't for anybody else. I think that, like you said, a lot of pageant girls are really high achieving, very service oriented, very giving. Most of us also tend to be people pleasers. And so a lot of things
Oh yeah.
about, yeah, like being this front facing, service oriented person, that sometimes I think we're made to feel guilty about the time that we put into ourselves. And so something I learned back in undergrad, a mentor of mine, Jerry, told me to be selfish about my time. So I take that very seriously. Like for me, past like 7 or 8 o'clock, I'm not doing anything for anybody else. Like that's my time that I'm going to kick back in my robe. I'm going to watch my TV shows. I'm going to decompress for the day. And I'm very, very intentional about that. Or, I do believe that the physical health and the mental health are connected. And so having a healthy relationship with working out, whether that's just like you running or you cycling just to get the energy out, doing yoga, just finding ways to be able to process and refuel yourself, because you literally can't. I tell my patients all the time, like if you're a bottle of water and you're constantly pouring, eventually it's going to be empty. And like, what are you going to do then? What service are you going to be to anyone then? So really being intentional about taking the time to yourself, to talk to yourself. And then, like I said, surrounding yourself with people that really genuinely know who you are. And it took me a really long time to find those people in my life that I felt like really knew me and could, attend to that. But really finding those people, one of the best things that my friend told me, one of the days as Miss DC where I was feeling really low, we were supposed to go to brunch in DC. And if anybody knows about DC brunch, you know that it's a whole thing. Like you have
That's
to
a
like,
day activity.
yeah, the whole. So I just was so down, and I was like, I can't go to brunch. Like I can't do my makeup. I can't, like, I just can't do anything. And they both texted me and were like, just get dressed. Like, just show up. You can borrow our energy for the day. Doesn't matter what you look like, just be there. And that was very foreign to me because, again, I think as pageant girls, we're used to like when we show up, we look a certain way, we present a certain way. But to have friends just be like, I just accept you as you are, base level, don't do anything, look like a bum. I showed up in some sweats to DC brunch, which if anybody, like, that is so foul for DC brunch. That is not what you do, but I did. And like to have friends that day didn't even make me feel like I was, out of the norm. Just literally were like, use our energy for the day, borrow it, no harm, no foul. And so again, like, I really can't stress having a beautiful support system, especially as a title holder. That is one of the most fundamentally important things that I cannot stress enough for your year.
I absolutely love that advice. And I've taken that advice in, and I hope that anyone who's listening really takes that in and really, really tries to figure out like who they need around them. Because sometimes it's not what you're doing. It's who's in your corner and who's there to keep you going. So I absolutely love that. Okay, I feel like we could go on and on and on about mental health. We could talk for a million years about your transition from teen to miss. So you'll just have to come back on the podcast and we'll have to do that on another episode. But I really would love to know, in this season of your life, how do you feel that pageantry has put you in position to win?
It's funny because I was just having this conversation with my mom where she was like, I think you don't realize that everything you do still comes back to the fact that you're Miss DC. Like, no matter how far away you get from it, it's always, there's something about it that comes back. One of the biggest things I would think is the connection that it has to my Navy career, which a lot of people don't realize. But in order to get the scholarship that I got, so I'm a Navy Health Professions scholarship scholar. And basically through doing that, the Navy paid for my doctorate education. In return, I owe them 3 years and am a lieutenant. And in order to get approved and selected for that program, which they only pick 5 psychologists a year for that, out of the whole nation. So in order to do that, in addition to the application process, which is incredibly intense, all that jazz, you have to sit in front of 2 naval officers who are also psychologists for an hour and get grilled on everything that there is to know about yourself, about psychology, about all of these different things. I was comfortable as a bird in that interview. And I remember afterward, my mom was like, I don't know. My mom, who has served 20 years in the Navy, was like, I don't know how you just did that. And I literally said, it's because of the interviews that I have had in Miss America. And that is one of the, when I think about the skills that I gained, the interview skills, the public speaking skills, very few things in life faze me when it comes to talk. I can talk to anybody about anything from any walk of life. I think it has transitioned in my job as a psychologist where, again, I never know what my patients are going to say. I never know what's going to come up, but I feel like my head is on a swivel, that I can always pivot. I can always attend to everything. And so it's those skills that I gained through interview, through being a Miss DC, where I had to talk to everybody, that I feel like still serves me and has helped me really grown into myself. And then like the presentability to that. I know that a lot of people like knock, Miss America now for maybe like trying to come back to the glamour. But there is always going to be something about a woman that is beautiful and intelligent and can do it all. Like, you'd be surprised how that still gets the people going, but somehow it still gets going. So I just would say, like, don't knock some of those things of just looking and feeling your best and being presentable. Those are skills that will translate across the board, no matter what you do, where you go. People will always stop and stare. There's been times at my job now where I will have people walk up to me and they're like, you were Miss DC. And I don't know who they were, but they knew I was Miss DC. So you never know who you're going to meet. You never know. You will never know as the people that you can come across, the impact that you can make as a title holder. But the skills that you gain are very much so transferable in ways that I still am utilizing.
I agree. There are just so many things, again, that we could just continue talking about. But I want people to know how they can follow you, how they can keep up with you, how they can book you if you're available for speaking opportunities. What do the people need to know in order to keep up with you?
Sure. So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm a Sagittarius, shameless plug. You can follow me at the All Around Sag. And then you can book me or just learn more about me through my website. It's www.andolynmedina.com.
I absolutely love it. I am so grateful to have had you on today. And I am so grateful for everyone who is tuning in because of you today. So if you haven't already, go to facebook.com/positioned to win to find all kinds of videos, helpful tips and tricks. And of course, follow Position to Win on Instagram, TikTok, and on YouTube. So thank you again for joining me, and I am so happy to have had you, and I know that you're going to continue to win in life.
Thank you for having me so much, Jada. And yes, we definitely have to do this again.
Yes.